I can never seem to get enough jet lag. I've watched every season multiple times, I'm constantly speculating about it, and I feel lucky just to exist in a time where jet lag exists. If you don't know already, Jet Lag is a YouTube/Nebula show where Sam from Wendover and two of his writers design and compete in games on the scale of countries. Over the course of several days they have to travel around, visiting sites and doing challenges. It's filmed vlog style with fantastic editing and a great sense of humor, and it really scratches the itch of both transit content and interesting game design. One of the most unique parts of Jet Lag is that it doesn't have a consistent game or setting. Each season is usually a completely new game that we get to see played for the first time. And today, I'm going to go through those games, talk about their design, the strengths and weaknesses, what I do differently, and see if we can get any insight. In terms of design, I'm looking for a couple of things. 1. Does the game make people go to interesting places? Does it feel like a travel game? 2. Does the game have ways to let people behind catch up and have a chance to win? That way the person in the lead doesn't just dominate the whole show. And 3, much more generally, is it a fun game to watch? Minor spoilers for all seasons. I'll talk about how the game works and how it goes, but I won't say who wins. Except for Season 2, where I kind of have to talk about it. Also, I'm not going to talk about Crime Spree or The Getaway. The most basic kind of jet lag game is a race. Teams start at point A and try their darndest to get to point B. The channel has done 3 races across America, New Zealand, and the entire world. Circumnavigation is by far the most ambitious season idea. A race literally around the whole world. It sounds like it would have to be cool. And look, I don't have the energy to beat up on Circumnavigation. It's widely agreed to be the worst season by everyone. To watch, it's sparingly short, there's some exciting moments, and it is a cool idea, but it has some major design flaws. The rules are pretty simple. To book flights, you have to earn real-world money by completing in-game challenges from a shared list. There's no restrictions for when you can do a challenge, but once a team does a challenge, it's crossed off the list, and the other team can't do it. But couldn't this lead to a situation where all the good challenges have been taken and one team literally can't move on? Well, yes, and that does happen. Sam and Joseph go to Singapore planning to do the bungee jump challenge, but unbeknownst to them, Adam and Ben go to Singapore first and they go bungee jumping. So now we get to watch Sam and Joseph sullenly wander the city looking for any way to do another challenge, even trying to gamble their money and then just give up. It's the only time a game fully broke, but that just means there's not a lot to talk about. If they were going to do this again, they should not make it so that can happen again. 2 out of 10. End of analysis. I would honestly like to see this race again. If you're going to do a season with lots of planes, you should go all out, right? But for boring legal reasons, I don't think they'll be doing whole world games again. The next race they do is Season 5, Race Across New Zealand. This one is kind of controversial, and that really revolves around one thing: cars. The entire season revolves around teams driving in their cars. This changes the typical fabric of jet lag, which is usually played on trains or planes. See, when you're hit with a 30-minute freeze in a game with trains, that could mean nothing because maybe your next train was in 40 minutes anyway. Or maybe your next train could be in 20 minutes, and now you have to wait 3 hours for a train. It's variable. But in a car, except for rare situations where traffic picks up, a 30-minute freeze means you start driving 30 minutes later, and you get to your destination 30 minutes later. It's very much determined. To mix it up, there's challenges at various landmarks along the highways that you have to complete. This means a faster path might have harder challenges, and the opposite. Also, if you can't or don't want to complete a challenge, you can veto it, but you have to wait there for some amount of time determined by the challenge. But then you'll miss out on the coins it grants. What do coins do? They buy you various power-ups. What do power-ups do? Well, for 25 coins you can turn off your tracker. Also 25 coins you can draw from the curse deck, which is all cards that let you hurt your opponents in some way. For just 15 coins you can draw from the roadblock deck, which is a deck that also hurts your opponents, but in like a different way. Specifically, roadblocks are played in a specific location, and if the other team wants to go through that location, they have to complete its specific challenge or wait for 30 minutes. Then, for 100 freaking coins, you can skip a challenge without waiting. This is particularly useful because unlike completing or vetoing a challenge, this doesn't remove the challenge from the board. So if the other team is following, they'll still have to do it. Also, you can buy a Nerf dart for 10 coins, and if you hit one of your opponents with a Nerf dart, you freeze them for 30 minutes. I know I'm saying this at the end of a long list of nonsense stuff, but it's actually the coolest thing here. This game is from the complicated era of jet lag. For seasons 3 to 7, every game needed a coin system and a power-up shop. Additionally, balancing the roads just has so many turnable dials. If you have 2 different routes and you want to make them equally viable, well, you can vary the number of challenges, how long challenges take, the difficulty of each challenge, the veto period for each challenge, and the coin reward for each challenge. But it's also tricky because the people balancing the game are the people playing it. So they know every challenge and you, the viewer, don't, which is a very weird viewing experience. Another design element that annoys me are the roadblock cards. Many of the roadblock cards require you to go somewhere and buy something to complete or face a 30-minute veto. So if you put a roadblock 15 minutes from the nearest store, then your opponents basically just have to veto it, because that's going to be faster.
How far? 22-minute drive, so it's not worth it to go. It's faster to veto.
Which isn't fair, but more importantly, just isn't interesting. It seems like part of the design was that if you were behind, you could follow on the same road, since all the challenges would be cleared, but that never works because of these roadblocks. All that said, the season is pretty entertaining. The second half drags a little, but it's good fun. Great moments, beautiful sights, and I was able to follow it just fine. It's the only season really tackling the challenge of making just cars interesting, and it runs right up against why that's so difficult. New Zealand is many people's favorite, but I think that's probably in spite of the design. Things could have gone a lot worse, and for that reason I think it's like a 5 out of 10. Season 8 marks the end of the complicated era. What, you might ask? There's no coin system? There's no power-up shop? How will our players turn on or off their respective trackers? How will they freeze each other for 30 minutes? The answer is, they won't. Arctic Escape is fairly simple then. Both teams are trying to get from Utqiagvik, Alaska to Key West, Florida. At any given time, there are 4 randomly chosen tickets available to both teams. Each will get you some distance on some form of transportation, and attached is some challenge. Like, do a TikTok dance for a 4,000-mile flight, or something. Once a team claims a challenge, the other team can't do it, and a new one is added. That's it. This allows for some good interaction between the teams, because when a good ticket pops up, both teams are going to scramble to get it, which leads to a lot of funny situations. You're also a lot less likely to get stuck than in Circumnavigation, because there's a lot of challenges, and you can basically always get somewhere with some card. There's a lot I like about this season. Michelle's great, there's some great lines.
If you Google moose in Utqiagvik, an article from 2020 pops up that a moose was found here, but, quote, far from its natural habitat.
I don't like that us finding a moose would be a news story.
These challenges are really cool and open-ended, like getting a car to honk or funding the military-industrial complex. Things that you really have to think about, like how you do them. If I had to think of flaws, I have a couple. One with the challenges that I'll get to a while later, and with the flight rule. The flight rule is that you can't hold 2 outside-of-the-game flight tickets at the same time, nor can you book a flight without the in-game ticket. The idea is that you can't buy your next real-world flight until you're off your last flight. And if you book a connecting flight, you have to act like it's continuous. You can't do anything on the layover. I do not understand this rule. It leads to situations where players land in an airport and have to immediately beg the gate agent to let them on a flight they totally could have booked hours ago. They like that this happens for some reason. It makes me really uncomfortable. They aren't rude, I'm not saying this is unethical, but please just admit it's weird to incentivize your players to, beg service workers. They say it adds drama, but I say it doesn't because they basically never make it. Minor spoiler here, but for every future plane-focused season, the losing team loses because they weren't allowed to book a flight in advance. Planes have a lot of drama already, probably more than trains. They get delayed or canceled, or security takes too long, or there just aren't flights at the time you want, and the consequences for these are way bigger than with trains or buses or any other form of transportation. Stop this. Please. Just get rid of this rule. Still, this isn't unique to Arctic Escape. I found a lot more to appreciate about its design over the years, or I guess the year and a half. 7 out of 10. That's high. That's a good score. The numbers don't actually matter, it's just so I can clickbait the title. We haven't seen a race since Season 8, and we've actually never seen a race with just trains. I hope we get to see races across, like, Europe or Japan at some point. I think there's potential there. The next kind of game is region claiming, where they break the map up into areas, and teams compete to claim as many regions as possible before time runs out. We've seen this twice in the US, once in Australia, and once for the countries of Europe. Connect 4 is clearly a bit of a stumbling point for the show. It was the first season filmed and has some weird issues. Both teams can go to any western US state, get to that state's capitol building, and complete a random challenge to claim it. 4 in a row wins. Easy. There's no real restrictions on cars, so it's a season with a lot of driving. None of the challenges are all that interesting. It's mostly backyard barbecue stuff. Also, instead of like a veto penalty, each team just gets 3 vetoes they can use for free. But also there's cards that let you instantly claim a state with some penalty for later. And if you were at the end of the game and you needed to claim a state really quickly, you could just hypothetically spam the veto until you get an instant claim challenge and instantly win. That's also not really a hypothetical, it just is what happens. Also with Connect 4, it's not unlikely that it could have just become impossible to connect 4 states, or the time could have run out before then. I get that they had some tiebreaker in place, but it would have been really boring, right? Like a 3 or a 4 out of 10. Again, I don't feel like beating up on Season 1, because it was early in the show, and a lot of these issues were addressed in Season 4, Battle for America. Battle for America is a similar region claimer game, but now with all 50 states plus DC, and your goal is just to get the most states. To claim states, you have a handful of challenge cards, and once you complete a challenge, you claim the state you're in. Battle for America is another complicated era season. There's a power-up shop, there's kind of a coin system. The rules around car usage are complex, just so cars are not too good, but also you have to allow cars a little, or getting around is like impossible in the US. You could also steal states, which requires drawing from the new battle deck, but you also have to have 2 states on the border with the state you're stealing, and there's a 25-minute countdown from when you enter the state, and we can't forget about the area bonus. And I really like Season 4. I think it's super underrated, great plot, great drama. I like that the challenges are open-ended but still require you to be somewhere. What I mean is that there are challenges that require you to be on an island, at a levee, or in front of a war hall, but these weren't designed to be done in any specific location, like a New Zealand challenge. Tag and Arctic Escape have these kinds of challenges, but Battle for America is the only one where you also get to decide where to go. To me, that sounds the most like a geography game. In terms of flaws, there needs to be an easier way to get new cards, and the power-ups are mostly unnecessary. But by unnecessary, I don't mean not good. Card swap, in particular, is just so powerful, letting you take 2 cards out of your opponent's hand and give them 2 of your worst cards. And this is especially powerful because you need good cards to claim states. It allows you to disrupt your opponent's plans really easily, but also completely warps the game because the best thing to do in that situation is just to use your own card swap and get your good cards back. So then the game just becomes a power-up arms race. My first change to this game would just be to take out card swap. The biggest issue this season faces is that Sam and Brian just get a terrible starting hand and are playing from behind the whole time. Out there is probably a universe where Season 4 is more beloved just because the teams had more even luck. I think 8 out of 10 is maybe fair. I really do hope they revisit this cards in hand kind of game. $tralia is the least jet lag next to New Zealand, and maybe even less jet laggy. In Season 10, your goal is to own the most Australian states, or I guess also territories, but not external territories. Cities is the most accurate term because the travel in the game mainly consists of taking planes between major cities to do challenges. They take public transit in the cities and they get a bus to Canberra instead of a plane, but it matters almost not at all to the game. Basically, you have a starting budget and you wager some amount towards a location-specific challenge in a city. Then, if you succeed, you multiply your money depending on how hard the challenge is. Then you can put your money into a city, and to own it you have to be the team with the most money put down. You also have to pay for flights with that money. Now, that really isn't that complicated. I've explained it more than the other games, but it is a fairly simple set of rules. The game is just deceptively simple. It's like chess in that the actions you take are very basic, but how to use those actions to win is entirely unclear. In a game like Season 13, which I'll get to in a minute, you just go to as many countries as fast as possible and try to do the challenges if you can. In a game like New Zealand, you drive your car forward. But in ADST, every action could have any number of downstream consequences, and each decision is just so granular.
By the way, this is something you're gonna see over the next few days. This game is very hard.
It's incredibly hard.
How much money do you put down? How much do you wager? On what? Where do you go? What are you expecting your opponents to do? It's a game with tons and tons of depth. Easy to learn, hard to master. And there's a sense in game design communities that this is the best kind of game that requires intense strategy, and no, it isn't. Look, I respect chess nerds. I respect chess as a science and an art, but as a non-chess nerd, I get nothing from playing chess, from watching chess, or from anything. Hard to master games are just as hard to follow. So I legitimately couldn't tell you why whoever won Season 10 won. Well, they won because of the plane rule, but beyond that, I don't know. Maybe the losing team could have found a path to victory, or maybe they couldn't. And then maybe once they found that path to victory, the other team could find a different path. And then there's another path. Because there's not that many cities, they couldn't be permanently locked, or the game would just end as soon as someone got like 4 cities. This is the only way they really could have done Australia. It's sad, but the season does end up with some redeeming qualities. For one, failable challenges became an instant classic. Before, challenges could be reattempted until you just gave up. But every challenge in Season 10 has a point at which you fail and your money is gone. And that's just so tense. Jet lag is legitimately heart attack inducing at times, and this only contributed. These are actually good things. I like almost having a heart attack. 4 out of 10. I think Australia just isn't a hospitable country for jet lag, so I'm not sure what I would do, but such a deep game really didn't work that well. And Ben has reported that this has been one of the worst performing seasons. Battle for Europe is the Tom Scott season, and well, I liked it. The rules are simple. The first team to set foot in a country claims it. Then, to either steal a country or lock it to your team, you must complete its specific challenge. You can only have one challenge active at a time, and you can't do them near airports. Most countries wins. There. I just explained all the rules of Season 13 to you. The beautifully minimalist rules here leave me not a lot to criticize. I could make up additional rules that maybe would improve the game, but I think its simplicity is really its charm. But we haven't even gotten to the best part. You know those challenges for each country? Well, neither team does. And that's because somebody else wrote them, and they've been sealed in envelopes. I could shed a single tear. I think this would have fixed seasons like New Zealand or Arctic Escape. The fact that the designers are the players and that they've spent months thinking about the challenges just takes away a huge amount of spontaneity. I'm now going to spoil some major events for Season 8, such that you'll probably know who the winner is. Skip to timecode to avoid spoilers. It's the second to last day of the race across America. Adam and Ben are in downtown Chicago. Sam and Michelle are in Dallas. Throughout this game, both teams are provided with a list of all possible tickets that could come up for each day. Sam and Michelle have always been researching which tickets might be coming up.
They should look into locations.
Girl, I got some Goodwills in Boise, let me tell you, because I did my spreadsheet. Ayy.
They know that 2 good cards are in the deck. One that involves Muffler Men and one that involves standing where Elvis stood. So they just go directly between a Muffler Man and a field that used to be a stadium Elvis performed at. Elvis didn't actually stand there, but that's a separate issue. Meanwhile, Ben and Adam are just chilling in the South Loop. They have not researched challenges, they don't know what could come up, so when the Elvis challenge does get drawn, they're just scrambling while Sam and Michelle are already in an Uber on their way to the stadium. This isn't fun. This challenge ends up deciding the game, and it feels really unfair. But you might object and say, hey, Ben and Adam could have done this too. Yeah, that's the worst part. I think if the game was played like this, it would be boring. The interesting part of this challenge isn't taking an Uber to an empty field. It's doing the research to find out where you can prove he stood. And for Sam and Michelle, that research is already done. There's no drama.
What do you want?
We have funded the military-industrial complex.
I guarantee you there were easier ways that you could have done that, but we're not going to tell you what they were.
If both teams saw this challenge and scrambled, that would be interesting. It would be dramatic. But that can't happen because you might as well use that list of tickets if you have it, and you have to give the players that list because they designed the challenges. They already know what they are. There's really no way around this. The challenges in Battle for Europe have this wonderful air of spontaneity. When a team tries to run through several countries, they'll have no idea how hard the challenges might be. When the teams do something like the Tiny Museum or the Blind Lego set, they have to actively think for the first time about how to do it. The Czech Republic Challenge sees Sam and Tom come up with several clever ways to make things easier. And if they wrote those challenges, this would be kind of annoying, but since it's genuine in-the-moment creativity, it's kind of cool. Thinking is now part of the game. So why isn't it always like this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Challenges could be too difficult or too easy. I honestly do think they were a little too easy this season, but that's not a new problem. Digging a 6-foot hole was undoable. The pastry mile in Season 2 was genuinely unsafe. The Australia challenges were pretty unbalanced. $. I think the real issue is that now, if a challenge is bad, people will have one person to blame. And if things went really bad, I don't think the internet is above harassing a woman for making their favorite team lose a YouTube game. So I understand their concerns. It's a lot of responsibility for anyone, but I think this is still something they should be doing that will make the game better. You could have multiple outside people work on the challenges, so there's less of an issue. You could also have everyone submit anonymous challenge ideas to a moderator who then tweaks challenges while adding some of their own, so nobody knows exactly what made the final list. However they do it, I really hope they revisit outside designers for challenges. I think it's what Jetlag needs most. Ultimately, Season 13 suffers from geography. There just aren't that many European countries you can quickly get to from each other, so the first couple days are spent fighting over countries in Central and Western Europe, and then the game slows down a lot as they visit like 1 to 2 countries at a time. I don't exactly know the solution to this. You could just make the game shorter, you could allow cars in some areas, you could have all the countries unlock on the last day, you could divide the bigger countries into regions. I don't know if any of these are that great. 8 out of 10 seems fair to me. I think if this were a 3 or 4 day season it would actually be more like, and I really appreciate the bold minimalism and the innovation. I hope we get more seasons like this. Round robin games are what I'm calling every season with just the 3 core members. These games have no teams and only one winner. Sam, Ben, and Adam take turns trying to do something while the other 2 try and stop them. When they're caught, positions rotate. I can just tell you now, Tag Across Europe is a 10 out of 10. This was my and many other people's introduction to the show, and it just captures this sort of weird subconscious fantasy people seem to have. When I was in middle school, the 8th graders had a long-running, very intense game of tag, going to the point that teachers had to ban it. There's a probably not that good movie about a big game of tag, and it also reminds me vaguely of like the Paintball or Floor is Lava episodes of Community. I think a lot of us have this desire to play these schoolyard games on an adult scale. Becoming an adult is just a very scary and confusing process. It is more acceptable than ever for adults to watch kid shows, to say they like stuff from their childhood, but still, when it comes to sports, we have to play like pickleball or frisbee golf or something. Why can't me and my friends just play Infection or Ghost in the Graveyard or Sandman? Why can't we just run around screaming at each other until we all get tired? Why can't we play tag? The goal of Tag Across Europe is simple. Get to your specific end location before you get tagged. Once a runner is caught, positions rotate, and then that person tries to reach their location. Some of you might have gotten upset when I said Season 3 and 7 were complicated era, since they're just tag, and I think this is justified because tag looks a lot more complicated than it is. To move in tag, you have to spend coins that you earn in challenges, and each form of transit has a different per minute cost, and each challenge gives you a different coin amount, and there's power-ups. And I think the success of Tag is what allowed 4, 5, and 6 to have a coin system and a power-up shop. But Tag never felt complicated because it always boiled down to simple situations. I need this many coins and I have this much time. Let's do challenges. That gameplay loop is in itself enjoyable. It is just fun to watch someone try to speedrun challenges to catch trains and hoping the chasers aren't right behind them. But then you do find interesting scenarios like trying to sneak past the chasers or trying to predict where the runner will go. The Northern Italy season is fine, but Western Europe is just the best place in the world for this. You have great, incredibly dense transit, but you're dealing with several different systems that you have to manage the connections between, so there's no hubs that serve anywhere or straight shots that you can take. It looks like Season 15 will be an all-star tag season, and I'm already hyped. I am perfectly fine if they do tag every year from now on. 10 out of 10.
Hide and seek was the logical next step, right? Instead of a person with a tracker on them moving around, you have a person frozen in place with no tracker. In hide and seek, the hider has some amount of time to take trains around a country to hide. The general area of where they end up is their zone and they can't leave. Then the seekers come out and search for them by asking questions. Photos of things in their zone, if they're within a given distance of the seekers, if they're in the same region. Then, once the seekers reach the hider's zone, the hider has to be in their final hiding spot. Finally, the seekers wander around asking questions until they find them. Longest total hiding time wins. I'm being kind of vague in my description because there are a couple different versions of hide and seek. One that they used in Switzerland for Season 9, and one that they used in Japan for Season 12, as well as in New York City for Season 13.5. Switzerland had a couple of problems. For one, a 30-hour game was just too short, meaning only one person got a second run. You might also be wondering what's to stop the seekers from just spamming as many questions as possible, and in Switzerland there really wasn't anything. Well, kinda. So in Season 9, whenever the seekers asked a question, it'd give the hider some number of coins, depending on the type. Then the hider can use those coins to buy curse dice, that they then roll all at once, and the number that they roll determines the curse the opponents get. These curses are often like challenges for the seekers, but some of the higher up ones that you move from your spot. Since higher number curses are better and rolling more dice will have a higher average, you're incentivized to save up on dice. So all the seekers have to do is not ask too many questions and they'll be fine. Meaning we only saw 4 curses the entire game. Everything was streamlined a lot for NYC and Japan, and so they make for 1.5 pretty good seasons. Now you draw cards for each question from a deck that includes time bonuses, power-ups, and good old curses. As a game, hide and seek works basically anywhere with transit, and really lets you explore the weird little places of a country. I just don't like the endgame though. I feel like it's mostly wandering aimlessly, which isn't really a geography game. When someone hides in a really tough spot for multiple hours, that's never like a thing that makes me happy. I don't know who benefits from that. The biggest flaw of both versions is probably the round-robin nature. Not everyone can be guaranteed the same number of runs, so it's always going to be a little unfair. But the worst part is that the person in the lead still gets additional runs, even though they're in the lead. They've already said this isn't ideal, and they'll be playing differently in the future. However, this isn't a problem in NYC, where they have 2 teams of 2 like a regular jet lag, and they each just run once. Longest run wins. That's also what we did when I played this game because, oh yeah, you can buy a little kit of this game and play it in your city. The second I heard about this, I knew I had to do it. I've always wanted to do a jet lag, and I'm very glad I got to do so. I got very into it. I even learned how to draw a circle in Google Maps, which is way harder than it sounds. The game comes with 3 modes for different sized maps. We played the version for small maps around downtown Chicago. I had a lot of fun. I got to see my city and transit system from a whole new perspective. I enjoyed a lot about the game, especially the multiple times I got offered directions in the city I've lived in my whole life. The game was a great experience, but there were a number of issues. One being that the game has probably been optimized for watching someone play a large game, leaving the smaller version feeling much more stripped down. The photo questions are really limited. Building from the train station is the only way to easily confirm you found their zone, so you basically have to ask for it every game first thing. Additionally, you just have fewer questions and fewer interesting cards will come up. Much of the time will be this stupid endgame, but it's not as easy as just like getting rid of the endgame because you do want a little bit of that, but having it last near an hour is just never fun. What were you expecting? It's the small game. This is a fine point, but I think the small game really should work. I don't think you could play the large game anywhere in North America, and even in Europe it would take a weekend and cost a good amount of money, so I think most games will be small to medium. Even small was a pretty big endeavor for a game. It's exhausting, you have to walk a lot, think a lot, sit for a long time in a potentially uncomfortable place. I'm still figuring out how to adapt this to be a better local transit experience. Definitely a tough one, but I'm honestly so glad this exists. The large game design-wise is probably an 8 out of 10, medium for New York City is like a 7 out of 10, small is like a 6, and the weird Switzerland game is like a 5. Oh boy, Snake! You know that Chrome game you'd play during virtual learning, in between managing your monster collection and listening to 100 gecs, and calling your bro a simp for his Among Us gameplay VODs while you watch Clone High? That game? Snake?
Well, it's actually an old game, like really old, 2007 old. But more importantly, it's the most recent jet lag season across South Korea. That bit sucks. One person is the snaker, and they're trying to just move in a straight line from station to station. The other two players are the blockers, and they have to try and guess where the snaker's going to go and use cards to block him. The longest snake wins. The thing with the South Korean passenger rail network is that it's not exact. It's not on Google Maps, and its details aren't shared internationally. So the team just made their own map based on what they could find. This leaves the game feeling a lot like New Zealand, weirdly, where the map is kind of artificial and the little things like local transit don't matter. Unlike tag or hide and seek, you can't do anything clever like walking between train stations or taking a train on an obscure line. It's not helped by the fact that the rail network really doesn't go through the city centers, so most of the season is filmed in new developments. Towering identical skyscrapers, many lane roads, and open fields. Just not the best setting for jet lag.
The snakers and blockers only see each other's locations at specific times. Nobody knows where anybody is, and it's really hard to follow from an outside perspective. I think they maybe should have just edited from the snaker's view only. I don't know. This season's now over, shockingly, and it feels like it never got started. There's sparingly few challenges. The only ones come in the form of challenges that the blockers put at stations. To put down the challenge, the blockers have to do it to prove it's possible.
And if the snaker fails a challenge, their run is instantly over.
This means the challenges are high stakes, but they're way too easy. No snaker ever fails a challenge in the whole game. But the real way snakers get stopped are through battles, where the blockers stay at a station and face off against the snaker for all the marbles. But literally all the challenges are these backyard barbecue games where local geography doesn't matter at all. The incentives are also just messed up. Since the snaker isn't in any danger if he doesn't move, a snaker in the lead could just sit there until the game ends, so no one else can get a run. And to prevent this, they added a rule where a run automatically ends after 18 hours. This feels like the laziest solution, because there's still nothing making a snake go forward. Basically every snake at some point says, I'm not going to go forward until the blockers do something. Yes, doing this could disadvantage you because you won't cover as much distance in 18 hours, but not everyone's lasting 18 hours, and waiting will give you an advantage right now. I would have used some other rule that requires you to keep moving, like if you stay at a station for 3 hours, you lose. Also, it's supposed to be a game about getting in front of the snaker, so you can't put roadblocks or battles in front of them if you're on the same train. But there are situations where you do want to ride the same train. Mainly, you can play a curse if you're on the same train as them, which might force them off the train so you can get ahead. I'm becoming a lot less fond of games with cheeky little edge cases like this. Snake should just be a game about prediction, but with curses, it really isn't.
Snake is not great, if you can't tell. When I first listened to the design podcast, I was really excited, and it just hasn't worked out in execution the way it sounded on paper. I'm not sure any of these issues can be fixed without completely overhauling the game, though. I don't know of a better way to do South Korea. 3 out of 10. Capture the Flag Across Japan is the last season I haven't talked about, and it's the only one that doesn't clearly fit under a category. Season 6 isn't exactly a fan favorite, and I think the team knows it wasn't as good as it could be. On their YouTube page, the seasons skip from 5 to 7, and Capture the Flag doesn't come up when you search Jetlag Season 6 on Nebula. It's the only season I've watched just once, so I went back to it for this video. And it's hard to know exactly what the problem is, but there definitely is one. People complain about the rules being complicated, but is it actually more complicated than New Zealand? People say they barely leave Tokyo, but there are some cool sequences in the countryside. Besides, Tokyo is a very cool environment for a game. I think what people are really upset about is the game's strategy being complicated, especially because balancing Capture the Flag is really difficult, much harder than something like Tag. You have to make it so it's possible to get to the flag and back, but not too easy. The other issues come from just the nature of the network. Even the best rail network on Earth, which Japan basically has, is going to have hubs and choke points because that's just the most efficient way to transport people. But that's not fun. Western Europe is such a good area for Tag because going between European countries just kind of sucks. This is also the only game where the teams split up, which you kind of need to make Capture the Flag work, but it leads to at times 4 different POVs, which makes it really hard to follow. It also seems like navigating the very dense network was supposed to be part of the game, but that's a hard thing to capture on video, leading to an extremely chaotic game. At multiple points, they turn an entire sequence into just a montage because nothing important happened. At multiple points, VO has to come in to explain what the hell is going on. At multiple points, people get screwed because they weren't checking their trackers or weren't looking up which trains someone could get on. Additionally, yeah, they really don't leave Tokyo, and when they do, the geography of that place doesn't matter. For some reason, this game has rounds, and each round the map expands to have more flags further from Tokyo, but for some reason they just keep the closer flags in the game, and those flags are worth the same amount of points. Why? It just makes the whole game so Tokyo-centric. It's also just way too easy to play defense if you focus 100% on it. We spent an entire episode watching someone try and fail to do offense while the other team just sort of snarkily blocks them every time. Towers are too complicated. I don't get why you can play a tower while you're in the other team's territory. Lots and lots of stuff would need to be changed to make capture the flag work. 4 out of 10. I have been kinda negative today, and I think that's for the simple reason that when something's good, it's very obviously good, and there's just not that much to say. But I think I appreciate the bad parts. Tag was pretty much perfect, and it was only Season 3, so they could have just given up designing games at that point and made the whole show Tag. But I'm glad they didn't because it leads to all these interesting game design questions. How many shows can you even make a video like this about? How many shows are constantly reinventing themselves in this way? Not a lot. In a way, Jetlag has become a show about the results of game design. Like a lot of online content, it doesn't really have a fourth wall. The fact that someone had to record it and edit it and design it isn't something it hides. In a way, Jetlag is about the logistics of making a show like Jetlag. You almost feel like you're one of the team, and in the same way you might root for your favorite players, you root for the show to be good. And I think that's really special.